The topic of cholesterol is one of the most debated topics in modern day holistic medicine. I'm sure all of you, by the mere fact that you're sitting here, have investigated this already. So let me just start with the question. How many of you have been diagnosed with high cholesterol? Okay. And how many of you have been, subsequent to that diagnosis, prescribed a medication? Okay. And how many of you took medication? Okay. So there's two sides to every story, it's been said, and I'm going to try to present a balanced approach to the cholesterol issue. It's very easy to point at standard medicine and say, well, this is absolutely wrong. Why are they doing this? Certainly, there's a reason why we do everything, but the reason for cholesterol, especially as scientific knowledge and empiric observation has caught up, there's really, it's becoming harder and harder not to criticize the way that we're approaching cholesterol in this country. And so, I'm not used to this iPad, so you have to forgive me. So the entire reason we're having this conversation in the first place comes down to food. It all comes down to food, right? So where do most of us get cholesterol from? This is a trick question. Where does cholesterol come from? Oh my gosh, you guys are right on. So most times when people go to the doctor and they're diagnosed with some condition, and the two most obvious ones are weight gain and cholesterol, what we do right off the bat is we look and we say, well, I'm overweight, I'm fat. Certainly this fat must be being created by consuming fat, right? It makes so much sense. One thing turns to the next. The second aspect of it is with cholesterol. You know, cholesterol is animal fat. The only place that you find cholesterol is in animal fat. So a vegetarian, or a vegan rather, consumes zero cholesterol. And so it's very, very tempting if you have high cholesterol to say, well, I need to quit eating cholesterol, right? It makes as much sense as any observation in nature. And so it follows closely behind that the way that we've prescribed it for the last 100 years is how we should be prescribing it for heart disease. And so what I hope to do tonight is I hope to paint the picture of how these things are happening, how it ends up in cholesterol, to what degree cholesterol is a risk factor, and then how we can correct any damage that's involved. Because let's face it, if you have high cholesterol and the fire department shows up at your house, we should be concerned, right? Every time well, it's really only happened once or twice, but I hear the doorbell ring and there's police outside my door, my immediate response is something's wrong. And that's how we should look at cholesterol. And so the whole cholesterol, the whole reason that we're having this conversation goes to one thing. And I already said food, it's not food. It goes to one emotion. Do any of you have any guess at what that one emotion, that one thing that drives humanity, which is why we're in this room talking about this? Survival is a good one, and I guess you could apply it to this. Stress. Well, I'm going to use the word greed. There we go. And so, unfortunately, it's very tempting when someone has a need to not want to offer them a solution. Have you ever heard the term pitchman? So John D. Rockefeller's father was one of the famous pitchmen of history. And another way of saying pitchman is a snake oil salesman. You have a need, I got a solution, right? And so somebody has cancer, somebody has any human condition, and you're offering them a magic bullet, something that says, look, it's not your fault, and not only is it not your fault, you have to take no personal responsibility. If you just attach yourself to this magic bullet, then you can continue doing whatever you want to do, and you're going to be fine. And unfortunately, that doesn't exist in reality. Anything that doesn't require your participation will not work. And a concept I'm going to get to in a little bit, and the reason it doesn't work is because it increases overall stress in the body. So greed led to, oh, I had these lined up in my original notes, but that's all right. Greed led to food problems. So if you're eating a balanced, nutritionally dense diet, heart disease will never be a problem. In fact, the first recorded heart attack in America, a lot of us don't know this, was in 1921. Prior to 1921, there was no recorded heart attack in a hospital. I mean, isn't that amazing? Yet today there's like 700,000 a year. So what happened from 1921 to current day? What happened was massive change in how we eat and our food supply. And so the principle of greed applied to farming equals huge farms that are monoculture. Now, many of you are old enough or remember how it used to be where, well, I'm going to back up and we'll talk about a history lesson. When pioneers came to America, they were blown away by the fertility of this land. I mean, they talk about how they could stick their arm elbow deep in the soil and it was all topsoil, right? And coming from, rock-infested Ireland, this was literally the promised land. It was the streets paved with gold. They weren't talking about actual gold. They were talking about topsoil of the land. And when people came, what they did is they cut down forest and they planted crops. And they did that until the crops failed, which with planting single crops and single soil always happened. But America was so vast, what we did was we would just go cut down another section of soil and then we would plant more crops. They're doing this right now in the Amazon. They're cutting down a section of the Amazon. It lasts for 3 to 5 years. And then when crop failures start, then they move to the next section. And so, what this does is it depletes the soil. And so next step in the line is fertilizers. As soil became depleted, so did the output of the land. And so what people started doing was, as they used up the nutrients in soil, they started putting nutrients back in. And the only nutrients that were recognized, everybody knows what fertilizer is, NPK, right? No other minerals and nutrients are recognized because that's what made things grow. And so America discovered fertilizers, and so we started fertilizing everything, and it was wonderful. I mean, it was magic. It was the cure to exhausted land. But eventually what happened is, even though we had these huge plants, all of a sudden bugs were attracted to these plants. And I go into this. This is another topic for another day. I'm writing a book about it. But what happened was bacteria, parasites, the earth uses these things to clean up the garbage. You leave a bunch of garbage in a room and it attracts rats. It attracts rats for a reason, because the rats are nature's way of cleaning up that alley. And so that led to genetically modified foods, which bugs couldn't eat, and the genetically modified foods led to insecticides. And so I'm getting back to cholesterol. It's all part of the story here. This led to a diet basically full of empty foods. They say it takes over 100 tomatoes to equal 1 tomato 100 years ago in nutritional density. It takes something like 15 cups of spinach to equal 1 cup of spinach now. I mean, it's really mind-blowing. And so when you take the minerals out of food, how many of you had a homegrown tomato? That's delicious, right? And then you get a store-bought tomato right next to it and it tastes empty. Most of us don't realize it's mineral content that makes food delicious. So as the mineral content of the food drops, what we have to do is we have to fortify it, right? Because we don't want our food to taste bad. So we fortify it with sugar to cover up the lack of taste. We fortify it with things like MSG and chemicals to give our food, our empty food, taste. And unfortunately, a lot of these substances that we fortify with are actually anti-nutrients. An anti-nutrient is something that when you eat it, your body has less nutrition afterwards. So when you drink a soda, the only way that you can possibly process that soda is to suck minerals, nutrients, vitamins out of your body, process the sugar, buffer the acid. So when you're done with the soda, you're actually more nutritionally deficient than when you started. And so what's happening is we're eating empty foods full of chemicals and anti-nutrients, and this leads to inevitably high insulin levels because our pancreas tries to push the sugar into cells. It tries to store the sugar. Sugar cannot be in your bloodstream. How many of you had a time where you overate sugar, your energy was up, you felt great, and then you crash? We see this in kids. They're so much fun to watch. They're bouncing off walls, they're crying, right? But when we crash, we get tired. We usually use coffee or something else to pull us back up, and we're on this roller coaster. And I don't know where all these came from, but so the high insulin leads to weight gain. So your body's not going to throw away sugar. It can't throw away sugar. When you eat sugar, it has to store it. And so the only place your body can store sugar is in your liver and in your cells. That's it. And you can only store like 90 minutes of sugar reserves. Sugar is the fight or flight response. You only need like this much reserves in your body so that you can run away from a tiger. And then you convert back to burning fat. Now, does anyone have any idea so you can only have a small amount of sugar storage. What does your body do when you fill up the liver, which is where you store sugar in the cells? Where does it go next? Where? Correct. Part of that fat conversion here we go. Okay, it looks a lot different than it did on my computer, but that's all right, we're following through. So the body converts excess carbohydrates to triglycerides and free radicals and puts them in the fat. That's what it does. At this point, your cells begin to starve for, when you're running off sugar, which is traditionally saved for fight or flight, responses, which is only supposed to be used less than 5% of the time. It's like the cheetah running down a victim. It should only be done 5% of the time. More than 5% and you're going to burn out your organs. Evolutionarily, it's saved for just times of emergency. But all this extra sugar, which turns into fat and into cholesterol and into triglycerides, causes arteriosclerosis. Okay, they've proven this. And so the arteriosclerosis created by high carbohydrates and carbohydrates turning into triglycerides converts into plaque in our arteries. And this is what we're all afraid of. So the plaque in the arteries also causes the body to respond. So the body creates cholesterol as the fire department to try to put out the fire being created by the conversion of sugar in the diet, too much sugar in the diet, and free radicals in the diet. The fire department is trying to put this thing out. But this, while this is responding, leads to coronary heart disease. Okay? Next step. What's the next step after people start getting heart attacks? We go back to our original concept, is unfortunately greed. This is where the snake oil comes in. You know what? This isn't your fault. You don't have to change your diet. This is like telling the diabetic, go ahead and just keep on eating sugar. I'll just give you more insulin. It's the magic bullet. It's the pitch man. It's people saying, look, I have a solution that doesn't involve your participation. And then greed leads to cholesterol medications, and also leads to bypass surgery. You don't have to change your life. You have this plaque in your arteries. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in. It's a 1-hour procedure. I'm going to put something in. It's going to open up your artery. You're good to go. And people say, yeah, that sounds great. And that leads to lots and lots and lots and lots. I'll show it in a moment. Money. I mean, massive money being generated. They say if they were to cure heart disease and cancer in the same year, that it would crash the U.S. economy. I'll show in just a second. Almost $300 billion per year are being spent on these two things. And so, I mean, massive amounts of money. That money leads to people, when you have lots and lots of money, it unfortunately leads to research, Congress being bought out, medical schools being taught the cholesterol, it's not your fault theory, and that leads back, of course, to more greed. And this is the cycle. This is how the whole cholesterol thing got started. And so if you want to stop ending up right here, all you got to do is cut off one of these initial steps, and the rest of them will stop. And so the easiest one is start eating nutritionally dense food. Quit eating food that's fortified with sugar and chemicals. If you do any of these things, the entire rest of the dominoes will quit falling. And so the outcome. And so again, the first recorded myocardial infarction in American history was in 1921. From that first recorded, by 1930 there was 3,000 US deaths. By 1960 there was 500. And then, what did we just see? Now it is 65 million Americans. And so Does this make sense to everyone? Everybody sees the dominoes falling. Everybody kind of understands how it works. Okay, and so let's talk about statin drugs for a second. Statin drugs provide a benefit. It's a benefit that is only worth it when you're at the very end stage of cardiovascular disease. So I've had people come into me and I've gotten their blood work back and their triglycerides are over 1,000, their cholesterol is 450, and I say, you are at risk of dying right now. You need to go to your doctor and you need to get on a statin drug right now. You have to use a piece of Scotch tape to hold together this health link until you can make the appropriate lifestyle changes. So thank God statin drugs are there. But I've seen like 4 people in 12 years who I think that's the case. The rest of the people, they're floating around a cholesterol of 200, 300. They're not at risk right now of dying. They have the time to make the changes because statin drugs come with a side effect. So any drug, they always like to call them side effects. There's no such thing as a side effect. There's only cause and effect. So the effects of statin drugs, while lowering your cholesterol short term, is that they stop your cells from working properly, basically, because every single cell in your body has a cholesterol bilayer. Every hormone in your body is made out of cholesterol. Your brain is 60% cholesterol. And so it doesn't take a genius to realize why blocking this really important nutrient in the human body can cause major side effects really quickly. And so when you block the cholesterol that runs every cell of your body, your brain, your nervous system, your hormonal system, it causes fatigue, it causes memory loss, it causes your nervous system not to work, it causes your muscles to break down, it causes intestinal disorders, reduced libido, of course, depression, of course. Your brain's made out of cholesterol. Suicides, cancer, I mean, these are on AskPatient.com, and these are people that have searched Lipitor and saying these are the symptoms I'm having, so it's not my opinion. Cholesterol is proven to block coenzyme Q10, which is a nutrient necessary for your heart to be able to pump. Cholesterol blocks vitamin A. Statins block the absorption of vitamin A. And vitamin A is necessary for every step of your hormonal system. Here, I think that's the next slide. No, I'll get to it in a second. But every single hormone in the body requires vitamin A. So when you block these things, okay, let's talk about this. Your cholesterol is at 400 or 500. Let's Scotch tape you together. I think it should be against the law to use a cholesterol medication for more than 3 months. If after 3 months you haven't got the benefit that you were supposed to get, then clearly the side effects are going to outweigh the potential of stopping you from dying. And in fact, I think that every medication in the country should have a law attached not more than 3 months, because we're going to give people this window to make a lifestyle change. 3 months is plenty of time. If after 3 months you were unwilling to quit doing the things that are causing this, then you might as well deal with the consequences, because by blocking them, you're just going to get different consequences. You need a number of where not to refuse to go on cholesterol medication. Above 300, there's a problem. Below 300, if you're at 250, don't worry about it. It's actually the ratio between that is far more important than the total cholesterol. So I hate how they attach these terms to it. Good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. We all know this, HDL and LDL, right? There's no such thing as good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. Here's how it works. There's cholesterol going out. So think about the fire department. If you saw the fire department leaving the firehouse with sirens blazing, you know they're going to put a fire out, right? And then when you see the fire department coming back, they probably put the fire out, problem solved. HDL is the fire department going out, LDL is coming back. And so the ratio of guys going out and coming back should be pretty balanced. So your HDL should be 1/3 of your total. If your HDL is not 1/3 or 1/4 or even less, then it indicates a real problem, because it's all bad. It's only fires going out, and none of them are coming back, which means there's a huge fire blazing somewhere in your body that they're all trying to put out actively. Make sense? Good. Cholesterol is the mother of all hormones. The reason why we call this cholesterol is for lovers is because hormones are the cherry on top of life. I like to call it hormones are the cherry on top of the hot fudge sundae of health. Only if everything else is right do you get to have a libido. Only if everything else is right do you get to be fertile. Only if everything else is right do you get to have great energy. Hormones are the magic of life. Hormones are what make us feel great. They're what make us happy. When your hormones are low, you have a dark cloud over you. The end game is all hormones. And so there's this enormous temptation to just give hormones to people without fixing the entire hot fudge sundae of reasons why your hormones failed in the first place. But cholesterol is the mother of all ingredients that makes your hormonal system thrive. So you don't need to be brilliant. That cholesterol leads to pregnenolone, which leads to progesterone, which leads to all your adrenal hormones, energy. Cholesterol leads to pregnenolone, which leads to testosterone, which makes men muscular and virile and want to go out and conquer life. And so just like dominoes falling, if you stop this domino, certainly the rest of them aren't going to fall. So when choosing cholesterol, this is the last topic that you need to understand, we got to make sure that we choose cholesterol that is balanced. Have any of you ever heard of the term omega-3s? Have any of you ever heard the term omega-6? So omega-6 is polyunsaturated fat usually. It's things like olive oil, walnut oil. Omega-3s are like fish oil, right? And so in the human body, it should be a pretty balanced ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. But when you eat things that did not eat grass or greens first, they're much higher in omega-6. When the animal ate wild green things, it's much higher in omega-3. So stick with me. I know this is a bit complicated. So a cow that eats grass is going to have a good balance because the cow ate grass. A fish that's farm raised that eats corn is going to actually have a very low ratio of omega-3. So riddle me this, a grass-fed cow has more omega-3 than a farm-raised fish. Isn't that amazing? In fact, a farm-raised fish is one of the most toxic things you could possibly put in your body. So when we're eating cholesterol, and we want as much as we can, because the more cholesterol you eat, the more nutrients you're providing to have a virile hormone system. So I want to eat as much cholesterol as I can. In fact, the Eskimos ate 90% of their diet in the form of saturated fat. This is documented scientific fact, and they had no heart disease. The more your body's burning fat for fuel, the more you're getting saturated fat, the healthier you are. The more you're burning sugar and the less cholesterol and the less saturated fat, the lower your energy is going to be and the less hormones you're going to have. And this is biology 101. So we have to choose cholesterol that came from healthy sources. Because if we don't, it causes an imbalance in the ratios, and too much inflammation causes free radical damage, and then the dominoes start to fall to coronary heart disease. So I put this picture up here because a lot of people have never seen real butter. They don't even know what it looks like. I brought some orange butter down to a hunting cabin last year, and all my hunting buddies said, "What's wrong with your butter? Butter's supposed to be white." And I thought, oh my gosh, they don't realize they've never seen real butter in their entire life. How sad. Because when the cow eats grass, it produces vitamin A. Vitamin A is orange. And so we always, 100% of the time, want to be choosing wild or pasture-raised animals. Saturated versus trans fats, we talked about this. You want to get as much saturated fat as you can because it's essential for healthy function. It's essential for your hormonal system. It suppresses inflammation. It lowers your bad and raises your good cholesterol. It puts tissues, it puts omega-3 in your tissues. It helps your insulin receptors be more sensitive to insulin, so your insulin doesn't go up. It enhances your immune system. It encourages prostaglandins, which are anti-inflammatory compounds in your body. Isn't this good news? I mean, I think a loving God would allow us to eat things that tasted good, right? There's a reason that God made butter taste good, right? There's a reason our taste buds like it, because it's good for us. So some of you might say, well, sugar tastes good too, right? Evolutionarily, sugar was, it was wonderful to find. When people found a ripe apple tree, they would eat it. They would eat it until they could. And when they found a beehive, they would eat it. I mean, even in the Bible, it says, if you find honey, don't eat too much or you'll vomit. You can only eat so much honey before you vomit. I encourage you all to try. You eat apples, you can only eat so many apples until you vomit. I mean, there's a clear level where your body can't tolerate anymore. But because evolutionary, this is such good energy, there's no breaks when you take out the fiber and you take out the minerals and you take out all the things. So evolutionary in our brain, we just want to keep eating, but when you take out all the things that make us vomit or be full, none of us want to stop, which is basically the definition of a drug, actually. So I'm going to describe to you the process that we take people through to get them healthy no matter what their problem is, but most especially through cholesterol. So an average Joe comes to us and they say, look, I feel like crap. It doesn't matter what they say. I'm overweight, I have low energy, I have headaches, I have no libido, I'm in pain all the time. We take everyone through the same process. We say, look, let's look at the dominoes. First thing we got to do is you got to quit eating sugar. Studies have shown that insulin causes all the problems. There's lots of research that you can literally reset your genetics, literally reset your DNA by doing a sugar fast. And so every single person who we start in any program, we make them do a sugar fast for 2 to 3 weeks. No sugar, nothing, not one bit. If you eat a piece of apple pie on day 15, you start over again because you have to go the whole period of time to actually reset your DNA. Yeah, anything that turns into sugar. So they're on a meat and vegetable diet. Next thing that we do with everybody is we heal and seal your gut. Most people, because of too much sugar, too many empty carbohydrates, they've damaged their digestive system. Once you damage your digestive system, you cannot absorb nutrition. This is the tipping point for most people, where they've done so much damage to their gut that even if they eat the nutritionally dense foods, they can't get it. It's really a dangerous place to be in. So people, when they start coming to us and say, look, I'm getting heartburn, I'm bloated every time I eat, I'm not going to the bathroom every day, it means they've damaged their digestive system. It's almost everybody. So we heal and seal the gut. Next thing we do is we try to get people to move. Only 3% of Americans exercise on a regular basis, which is crazy. We sit. Sitting is the new smoking. I keep hoping I see that in the New York Times. Sitting is the new smoking. If you keep sitting, you're going to turn into a consumerist zombie. If that was on the front page of the New York Times, I'd love it. I don't think many people change. You got to move. You got to walk. I love Fitbits. You know, move 8,000 steps a day. Don't go to bed until you move 8,000 steps. It's great. Do whatever you love. Dance, run, walk, kayak. Just do something. Anything. Just move. Optimize your fats. That's a lot of what we talked about tonight. But and again, this is the tipping point. A lot of people say, I can't even eat fat. When I eat fat, I don't feel good. It's because they've damaged their liver function. So we got to fix their ability to utilize fats and fix their ability to even digest cholesterol. You cannot, this is really interesting, talk about dominoes. Unless you have sufficient cholesterol and fat-soluble vitamins, you cannot utilize your minerals. So if you have low vitamin D, you cannot use your calcium, you cannot use your phosphorus. So supplementing with calcium, magnesium, minerals, until you fix your fat-soluble vitamins is impossible. So this has come first, then this, then this. Linus Pauling, two-time Nobel Prize laureate, said, in the absence of minerals, vitamins have no function. In the absence of fat-soluble vitamins, minerals have no function. Does this make sense to you? One domino falls, the second domino, the third domino. A lot of people like to get on their multiple vitamin before they do any of this. It's a waste of time and money. Until you fixed all these other things, you shouldn't even really consider your cholesterol, you shouldn't even consider your estrogen, you shouldn't even consider your thyroid, because it is completely dependent on these other things. And then finally, after you've done all these things, you can detoxify and heal the past damage. We found that we can take people through this whole process in 3 to 6 months. We do it in an organized, step-by-step fashion, knowing that it's a waste of time and money to do it any other way. So let me ask you guys a question. If you want to, I'm going to go off of it and see if any of you are listening to me. What's step one that all of you can do starting tonight? You can lower your insulin levels. You'll do so much for your body by doing that. What's the next thing that you can do for yourself? Well, you can start eating nutritionally dense foods. You can go to farmers who are growing organic food. You can buy animals that were pasture raised, right? And then after that, you know, you're starting to get your fat systems working. And all these things, the beautiful thing about nature, if you just basically eat real food, grown in a healthy terrain, you don't have to think about any of these things. Only once you screwed it up with science do you have to use science to unscrew it up, so to speak. And so next step, disease processes. Does anyone know how many different disease processes there are? Like if you go to a doctor, how many different diagnoses, I have to do this, ICD-10 numbers can he choose from? Bazillions? You're close. How many, give me a guess. How many diagnoses are possible when you go to a doctor? It's 64,100. There's 64,100 possible links in your human chain that can break. Now, what is the only thing that causes human disease? I'm going to give you a hint. Stress. Physical, emotional, chemical stress are all cumulative to creating disease. This is the only theory of disease that holds water, literally. The more stress you have, the more tension on your train, the more likely that one of the links is going to break. What we love to do is we'd like to name the link that breaks, and we like to use suppression techniques to hold that link together. But when you use suppression techniques, you actually increase the tension on the train, making it more likely another link is going to break. You guys are following me? So to use a suppression technique increases your likelihood of disease and death, any of them. And so that's why I say all suppression techniques should be limited to a 3-month period, because the potential human damage being done by increasing the tension in your chain is really not worth it. And so what science has done and what we've done in this office is you can identify exactly how much allostatic cumulative stress you have in your body and how close you are to the tipping point or the breaking point. And what we do to do that is we use symptoms. We use dietary history. We use in-office measurements, waist-hip ratio, one of the best identifiers of disease known to man. We use the pH of saliva and urine. We do a mineral analysis. We monitor body temperature as a measurement of metabolism. And we look at some blood chemistries that matter. Through this, you can accurately determine your allostatic cumulative stress profile and how close you are to the tipping point. I went one too far. And then we can know exactly where you're at and how close you are to the disease. And then the types of stress I said are physical, emotional, occupational, spiritual, social, and intellectual. And so the goal of the doctor, the goal of the physician, whether you become your own physician or whether you hire us, is to lower the cumulative stress in the body. And we do this by applying the 7-step law of achieving health, all of which have the end goal of lowering the cumulative stress.